Hey there, thanks for joining me today. This is Laura Lynn with Keep Inking Up. I'm an independent demonstrator for Stampin' Up in San Antonio, Texas. And today I wanted to share a quick and easy card that you can make using any stamp set that you have, any inks, any paper. What I'm going to share with you today, I'm going to be using the Forever Fern stamp set with some purple cardstocks and inks. I have a purple posy card base, some gorgeous grape layer, and a Highland Heather layer, and a scrap of purple posy for my sentiment. But what I want to make sure that you understand is this card design can be made, like I said, with any stamp set, any inks, any paper that you have. And if you'll stay on the video until after I finish making the card, I'm going to share several examples of how you can use lots of different products to make the same card design. So, like I said, I'm using Forever Fern. I'm going to set that out of the way. And for any card, we need a card base. So I have purple posy that is half a sheet of cardstock. So it's 5.5 by 8.5, and it's folded in half. So I have an A2 size card. I'll put that aside. And then I have a couple layers of purples, because you know I love purple. I have a piece of Highland Heather cardstock that is 3 3/4 inches by 5 inches, and that's what we're going to actually stamp on. I call this my main stamped layer. That's what we're going to do the stamping on, and I'm going to stamp using gorgeous grape ink because all of the purples coordinate perfectly with each other. So I'm going to stamp on the Highland Heather with gorgeous grape ink. So I'll go ahead and open this up, and I'm going to begin with my favorite stamp of the stamp set, which is this large leafy image. I don't know what kind of leaves these are. I don't know why I like them so much, but I do. So I'm going to ink up the stamp, and I'm just going to stamp it in the middle. This is my favorite, and so I'm going to use it predominantly in the middle of my card. And I think that looks good. And I think I'm going to wait to do that. I'm stamping full strength to begin with these images. Then I'm going to take in the next largest stamp. Whenever I'm creating a background with my stamps, like a pattern background, I start with the largest images first, and then I go smaller and smaller to fill in the spaces. So this is another really nice leafy image. And there's no specific way to stamp these. It's just however you would like. So I'm going to do that. So I'm doing all of these in full strength in the beginning. This one I think is eucalyptus. Some people think it's like berries. I'm not sure. It's an interesting leaf image, and again I'm going to stamp that around, and I'm filling in the spaces at the moment with the full strength ink. And then I'm going to come in with this another leafy image. I love these leaf images. They're so pretty. And I'm filling in the largest spaces that are open. Now there's still quite a bit of space in this background, although you could stop right there. That is quite lovely. But what I'm going to do now is do some second generation stamping. So I'm going to go back to my images again. I'm going to stamp off and then fill in the white spaces, or not white spaces, the empty spaces with the images again. And this just really fills in the whole background without being too busy. And just remember to stamp off every time, and I'm going to do that for every image. And I'm going around wherever there's any more open spaces. And this is going to look different every time. And I think I want to fill in right there too. Isn't that nice? It's just a really nice, it's completely filled in. It looks like a pattern paper. You made your own pattern paper just using any stamps. And like I said, you can use absolutely any images with this process. Stamp full strength and second generation to give some real depth to your project. So that's my main stamp layer, and I'm going to go ahead and mount that onto my gorgeous grape layer, which is just a little bit bigger. I believe this is then 3 7/8 by 5 1/8, and I'm going to adhere the layers together using liquid glue. I like liquid glue, especially when I'm layering things with a small border like this, because it gives me time to really shift the paper where it needs to be. I can really glide it around to get it nice and centered on that matte layer. I think that looks good. I'm going to turn that over and I'm going to use some Stampin' Dimensionals to attach this to my card base. Oops. And as always, I put dimensional in each corner. And then I like to put 2 in the middle just so that my layer won't sag, especially when the layer is large like this. So I can take the backings off with these dimensionals. And then stick that on my card. And I'll put it right in the center like that. Okay? Now we need a sentiment, and you can use any sentiment in any shape that you want. I'm going to use, what did I do with it? If I can find it. I had a piece. Okay, I lost it, but here's an extra. Okay, I have a piece of the Purple Posy cardstock. This is 1.5 inches by 1 3/4 of an inch, but the size of this just depends on the sentiment that you are using. And you'll see in my other samples how I use different size paper. So again, it depends on what you're stamping. And I'm using the To a Friend That Makes Me Smile sentiment from the Forever Fern stamp set. So I'm going to ink that up. And pardon my head, but I'm going to try to line this up in the center. That looks pretty good, pretty straight. And before I add this to my card, I want to add a little bit of embellishment. And so I'm using the tricolor ribbon because it has the Purple Posy, Highland Heather, and Gorgeous Grape colors in the ribbon. That's one of the things that I love best about Stampin' Up! Products is the color coordination. You've heard me mention that before. So I'm going to add this on the back of my piece. You can tell I used this piece before for a card when I was designing this card. I'm going to use our Stampin' Seal Plus and add some adhesive on the back of this piece. And then I want to put the ribbon kind of zigzaggy across it. So I'm going to start there, make a little loop. So I've got some ribbon on both sides. And I think I have enough there. Oh, I cut a little bit too much ribbon, but that's okay. I can use this other little piece on another project, and I will trim that off on an angle so that looks nice. And I will add some dimensionals on the back of this one, of this sentiment. I'll remove the backings off of those dimensionals and place the sentiment on my card. Sometimes pulling off these backings is the hardest part of the card, because this card, as you can see, is not at all difficult. It goes together really quickly with any supplies that you have. And then you can place this absolutely anywhere on your card. I usually like to go wherever there's a bunch of stems showing so I can cover that up. So I'm just going to place, on this card, I'm going to place it right there. But it can go absolutely anywhere. So I hope that you can see how easy this card is. And just using the same elements, I'm going to share some other cards with you that use the same layer, the same dimension for the layers, and then a sentiment on a shape, and you can place it anywhere on the card. So this is the card that I just made. This is one that I made earlier, so you can see that I located my sentiment a little bit higher because that's where the stems landed on that card. But you can use different colors. Here's another example of using the same stamp set, but I used the blues. So I have Misty Moonlight, Night of Navy, and Seaside Spray. And I colored my crinkled seam binding ribbon with my Night of Navy blends so it would match. I did all of my inking with the Night of Navy color. And I don't know if you can tell, but I also added texture to this layer using the Tasteful Textures 3D embossing folder, and that just adds a bit to that card. So you can see it's the same, it's using all of the same elements. I did a circle for this sentiment instead of the rectangle piece, And in the cards that I'm going to share next, you'll see how I used very different shapes. So this again, I have the same dimensions for the same element for the background. This one I used the Celebrate Sunflower stamp set. You can see the sunflowers in the background. I have a So Saffron base, a pumpkin pie matte layer, and then Mango Melody on the stamped layer, and I stamped in the same Mango Melody color. We're using that stamp set. The Just Saying Hello is from the Tasteful Touches stamp set, and I cut it out using the Tasteful Labels dies that coordinate with that stamp set, and I even inked the edge of the die before I ran it through, so I would get the border around that particular die cut. And instead of putting ribbon behind the sentiment, I wrapped linen thread around the whole main layer using linen thread and added a little bow. So it's a very different looking card, but using the same exact elements. So I wanted to share that with you. If you don't want to do the stamping, oh, and by the way, I used the, this is the Tin Tiles 3D embossing folder on that layer as well. So you can use any stamps that you have, any embossing folders that you have, die cuts, etc. You can use absolutely anything that you have and just use these basic elements to create a card. And you'll notice in this one too, I went in the landscape orientation rather than the portrait orientation of these cards. So you can change it up that way as well. If you don't want to do some stamping, you can let your designer series paper do the work. So I have used the Playful Pets designer series paper in this background, and I layered that on a piece of basic black cardstock, and this is on a real red card base because those colors are in the designer series paper. I used the Peaceful Moments stamp set for the sentiment, and then I used the painted label dies to die cut the sentiment out, and I layered it on another piece of basic black instead of adding a ribbon embellishment on this particular card. So isn't that a fun card? I just love that. Then using the same idea again, I used the Ornate Garden designer series paper, and this again uses the Peaceful Moments stamp set for the sentiment and the painted label dies for cutting it out. And again, I inked it up to add that little bit of extra touch, and I added some gold twine to add a touch of elegance to that card. So again, it's a very different look, but using the same exact elements. And again, I'm using the, I think this is called Whale of a Time designer series paper. So fun. My mom collected turtles, so this really made me think of her. I miss her so much. And again, the Peaceful Moments stamp set, and this one actually uses the Tasteful Touches dies, I think. And I inked the edges again, and added some twine in the background again, just for an added sense of embellishment. And then my final example, just to show you how very different they can be, I used the, I think this is the Playful Patterns designer series paper. This is the Tasteful Touches stamp set and the Tasteful Label dies, and I added some ribbon behind it in a little bit different fashion. And again, I located the sentiment a little bit differently on this one as well. So I hope you can tell with the same particular elements you can create very different looking cards and orient them in a different way even, and create some lovely cards using the same elements. And it's still a fairly quick and easy card no matter what you use. So I hope you found this video helpful and inspirational, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks. Bye-bye.